Story time. So this was 2 years ago and I was at school and it was a normal day until the principal went on the speaker and said, "We're in lockdown, go in your closets." So we went ahead and went in the closets. We were all confused. Some people were scared. Everyone was like kind of asking the teacher what was going on and stuff. Now during this time, I wasn't asking anything or saying anything because I knew during a lockdown you don't want to say anything. So if there is someone in the school, they won't find where you are. But I was still listening to them because I was curious like everyone else. So while everyone was asking the questions, one girl stood up and said, "If you're not going to say what's going on, I'm going to get out of the closet." The teacher yelled at her and told her no. And the teacher yelled loud, so whoever was in the school obviously heard. So the door opened and everyone became silent. And so basically for part 2, welcome to part 2. Okay, so the guy that came into our school was a prisoner that escaped prison. So he was like, "Where are you?" And he stood in there for at least 10 minutes. Then we thought he left, but he was completely silent, and the teacher gave us a look saying, "Do not talk and do not move." So we all listened to the way he looked, and my best friend, the girl that stood up saying she would leave, got up and left. She thought that the guy was gone and she was going to get a counselor. So as soon as she got out of the room, we heard gunshots. As soon as the gunshots said that, I knew immediately what happened. I started crying and I thought that she was dead. The guy didn't even try to come in the room that we were in, even though he knew where we were. He immediately left knowing that he should have not shot the girl. Wait for part 3. Welcome to part 3. So as soon as the guy left, we got out of the closet and started panicking. We didn't know what to do since she was shot in the head and we knew that she wouldn't make it. So we were all freaking out and so was I, and I was crying and I just couldn't breathe right and I didn't know what to do. The speaker went off saying that the police and the ambulance were coming since the principal heard a gunshot too. So when the police came, they found the guy who was hiding in a locker and he got contained and taken to the police office. The ambulance were here and went in the room and took her. They said with their face saying she would not make it. That was the worst day of my life. So the ambulance took her and about 2 days later, we weren't allowed to go to the school since the guy was still on the loose. He escaped. So we all had to stay at our homes and I visited my friend and I didn't know she died.
I'm going to be telling you the scary story of the house I lived in elementary and middle school. It was a 3-bedroom house, 1 bedroom in the basement and 2 bedrooms upstairs. Because I was the oldest, I got put in the bedroom in the basement. Right when we moved in, I already had creepy feelings about the house. I hated being downstairs by myself. One day I dropped a $20 bill behind my dresser. I decided to move my dresser all by myself, and behind the dresser was this door. It wasn't a normal door, it was really short and just squared. It was also glued off so I couldn't get into it. Me and my neighbor, who were best friends, worked at it for days to get into it. We finally got it open and inside was another room. It was almost like an underground attic. The walls were wooden, the ceiling was wooden, there was no carpet, but it smelled awful. My parents found out and they were super mad at me for opening the room. They of course put that dresser in front of that door for a reason because they knew I would explore it. But after that, things started to get weird. Stay tuned for part 2. This is part 2 of my scary childhood story about the door behind my dresser. Of course, my parents were really mad at us for opening it up, so they sealed it back up. They just didn't want us to get hurt from all the rusty nails or if there was mold inside. But I think we released something when we opened that door and a lot of things started to happen. First, I started having night terrors to the point where I would scream at the top of my lungs and not wake up. My parents would have to come downstairs and wake me up and put me back to bed. Then, every single night I would have this reoccurring dream that me, my mom, and my brother were all at a picnic at the beach. This super old lady would walk up to us and she would take me. She then would lock me up in the room behind my dresser. This dream would reoccur every single night for months. It scared me so much that I started to not sleep at night. I developed insomnia and would only sleep for 2 to 3 hours per night at only 8 years old. There was a couple nights where I swear I saw the old lady standing in the corner of my room. My parents just thought I was hallucinating from no sleep though. Stay tuned for part 3. This is part 3 of my scary childhood story about the door behind my dresser. Because I wasn't sleeping and developed insomnia, my parents took me to a sleep therapist. The only thing the therapist gave me was a bunch of sleeping pills. Even though the sleeping pills worked, it made my dreams so much worse. I even started walking in my sleep. I would wake up all the time not in my bed. My covers would be all the way across the room like someone had dragged them over there. One night, one of my best friends slept over and we heard knocking coming from the door behind my dresser. That night when we went to bed, she started speaking really creepy gibberish in her sleep. I had to go get my mom to wake her up. I woke up a couple nights feeling like I was suffocating, and when I swung out of bed, I saw a silhouette of an old lady. My cat even started to sit there and meow and hiss at random things in the corners of the room. But there was nothing ever there. It got so bad to the point where I moved up into my brother's room. I am going to be telling you a scary childhood story. When I was 2 years old, my mom passed away. My dad wasn't in the picture, so I went to go live with my grandparents. My grandparents lived in a super old home that was built in the 1800s. I was a very imaginative child. So when I told my grandparents that I used to see people in the house, they just didn't believe me. There was one lady in particular that I would always see. She would sit at the end of my bed and watch me fall asleep. I wasn't scared of her because I thought she was an actual person. Plus, I was super little, so nothing even crossed my mind. At this point, I was like 4 or 5 years old. I remember her talking to me constantly. She even sang me the song Rockabye Baby to get me to go to bed one night. Every single day when I would get home, I could see her in my window. At that point, I thought she was just waiting for me. She just wanted to be my friend, right? But as I got older, things started to get really weird between me and her. She wasn't this nice lady anymore. Stay tuned for part 2. This is part 2 of the lady in my room who would sing me lullabies to get me to go to bed. No one else in my family could see her. She even told me that she was my mom. I really believed her. If you remember, my mom passed away when I was 2. So, it seemed pretty real that it was my mom. I didn't really remember what my mom's face looked like when she passed away. And this lady, could be my mom. She continued to sing me lullabies every single night when I would go to bed. She would always be waiting for me in the window when I would get home from school. But I figured out pretty quickly it wasn't my mom. My mom was a sweet, kind-hearted person. This spirit was evil. She would get mad at me every single time any of my friends would come over. She told me she could see my future and that I was going to go to hell after I died in a car accident. It scared me so much, but no one believed me. It got to the point where I never even wanted to go in the car because I thought I was going to die. She convinced me I was evil. Stay tuned for part 3. This is part 3 of the lady who used to sing me lullabies to get me to go to bed. This spirit was evil, and she started to convince me that I was evil too. She convinced me that I would go to hell because I was a horrible child, even though I wasn't. She convinced me that every single person in my life hated me. She even started to control my dreams, and I would wake up every single night screaming at the top of my lungs from a night terror, and she would be sitting at the end of my bed. This went on for years. When I turned 9, my grandpa passed away. And because it was a really big house, me and my grandma moved to a different house. And the evil spirit was just gone. I never saw her again. But was she really gone? When I was 15, I went to a psychic. The moment I walked into the room, she could feel a dark energy enter the room. She told me that someone was following me every single step I took. And when she said that, I knew exactly what she was talking about. After that, I went to a medium, and after many sessions with her, the dark presence was finally gone.